Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's Bhagavad-Gita as it is sessions. We are going to cover verses 11 to 20. Text 11. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ashocyan Anavashocastvam Prajanavadamascha Bhashase Gatasuna Agatus Sumcha Nanushochanti Panditaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. Verse 12. Natve tva evaham jatu nasham natvam neme janadhipaha nachaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayam atah param. Translation. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Verse 13. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantar praptir dhiras tatra namuyati. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Verse 14. Matra sparshas tu konteya shitoshna sukha dukha daha agama paino nityas tam titikshva bharata. Translation. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O sign of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Verse 15. Yam hi na Vyathayante ete purusham purusharbha sama dukha sukham dhiram so amritavaya kalpate. Translation. O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Verse 16. Na sato vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate satah ubhayorapi drishtontvastvan nayostva tattva darshibhi. Translation. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, that is the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal soul there is no change. This they have concluded by saying the nature of the both. Text 17. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvmidam tatam vinasham avyayesyasya na kaschit kartum marhati. Translation. That which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. Text 18. Antavanta ime deha nityasyoktaha sharirinaha anashino aprameyasya tasmad yudhyasva bharata. Translation. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharata. Text 19. Ya enam veti hantaram yaschainam manyate hatam Ubhau tau na vijanito nayam hanti na hanyate. Translation: neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it is slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is slain. Text 20. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So in these verses, Krishna is telling Arjuna about the identity of the body. The body is not the identity, the real identity is the soul. And Krishna says to Arjuna that you are speaking learned words, but at the same time you are full of grief, full of lamentation. Krishna is instructing Arjuna that he should know that the consciousness which is in the whole of the body of a person is the eternal soul. And the soul, it neither dies, nor it is destructed. It is eternal, it lives forever. The Prabhupada says in the purport of text 11 that because Arjuna is lacking in the knowledge, so he should not have posed himself as a learned man. Because he wasn't a very learned man, he was constantly lamenting about something which was not worthy of lamentation. Anyone who takes birth in due course of time is supposed to leave that body in which the soul has come. The soul is not going to stay in any species or any bodies forever. Up to a certain allocation of the time by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to that soul is going to stay in that body according to the deeds done by the previous karma. The time will be spent in the particular body in which the birth has taken place, and so it's not worthy of any kind of lamentation. Now the Mayavadi theory says that the soul is separated by the covering of Maya or illusion, will merge into the impersonal Brahman, and it will lose its identity. Now, Lord Krishna doesn't support this, and Krishna says to Arjuna that this individuality of the soul will be continued birth after birth. Problem is that the living beings, they take the body to be as the identity, and they think that once the body is gone, the identity, that body's identity, it gets submerged into the Brahman. But it doesn't happen like that. The soul, it doesn't submerge into the Brahman. The soul continues to have its identity, and soul is like that. Soul is an individual entity. It is part and parcel of Krishna. It is similar in quality, but different in the quantity. Now then Krishna again tells Arjuna that a man with a perfect knowledge of the individual soul, the super soul, and the nature, the Bhagavan, both material and spiritual, is called dhira, or is called a sober man. Such a man is not going to be deluded when the soul changes the body, when soul transmigrates from one body to another. Just like we discard the old clothes and we take on the new clothes, this is the nature of the soul. The soul discards the old bodies, the old identity of the which it has during the time it is on this platform of the earth, and then after the death the soul will take on a completely new body. But that is only a temporary identity. The real identity is the soul. When one realizes this thing about the nature of the soul, then a person is known as a self-realized person. So this is the difference between a realized and a non-realized person. A realized person knows that he or she is not this body, they are the soul. So in this context, Krishna says to Arjun to do his duty, which is to take part in the war, and he shouldn't think of having any kind of sin on himself, that he's going to kill his family members in due course of time in the war, and he has to tolerate this killing of his kinsmen in the war, because that is his duty, to take part in the war, and he should not get disturbed by the dualities of these of the happiness and distress due to the war, and he has to stay very liberated. Now Krishna says that the ones who know this knowledge, they know that for soul there is never any change. The soul exists permanently, always, and the soul doesn't suffers any kind of sufferings. It's just the body which goes through all the sufferings, and one has to understand this through a bona fide spiritual master, like we said yesterday. And there is an eternal relationship between the worshipping person and the worshipable. So there is an eternal relationship between the soul and the Paramatma form, which is Bhagwan in each of us in our heart as super soul, and the Bhagwan. So there's an eternal relationship. We have to serve that Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we are part and parcel of each other. So this is the relationship between us and Bhagwan. And this soul is never going to be destroyed. It is imperishable. It is indestructible. And you cannot even measure it. The entity is sure to come to an end, but the soul it lives on. The body is not important. The important is soul. So we should take care of the soul more than our body. Of course, we don't say that. Prabhupada never tells us not to look after the body completely, because body is a medium for our soul to worship Paramatma. So we have to take care enough to keep it in a comfortable state. Because if the body is very uncomfortable, distressed, then also worship is not going to be possible for us. And Arjun is also told that the body is not hurt by anything. The soul is not hurt by anything. The soul remains as it is. Only the body suffers. So he's also advised that killing of the animals is not um uh, advised, but in the war you have to kill the opposite side. But this is the nature of the war. This is the part of his Kshatriya Dharma which he has to uh, follow. And again in verse 20 he is told that the soul neither takes birth nor dies, neither it comes into being or it will not come into being, or it has not come into being, or it does not come into being, or it will not come into being. It is eternal, it is everlasting, it is as old as the Bhagwan himself, and only the body becomes from a baby to an old person. The soul is always young, is eternally youthful, it is eternally joyful. Satchit Anand Vigraha, that's the nature of the soul, always blissful, always eternal, and is always full of knowledge, because it is, after all, part of Bhagwan himself. So one has to take care of the soul and not the body. So this is the instruction of Krishna to Arjuna, that super soul and the soul, the Paramatma and the Jivatma, they are on the same tree of the body, within the heart of the same living being. And only who has become free from all material desires, as well as lamentations, as well as grief, so as to say, and that too by the grace of the Bhagwan himself, that person can only understand the glories of the soul. Now Krishna is the source of the super soul also, which is in our hearts. So we will continue speaking about it from verse 21 onwards. And we shouldn't forget that all this knowledge only can be begotten from the spiritual master, from a bona fide disciplic succession. And his knowledge also starts from Krishna himself. Krishna has given knowledge to Vyasadeva, and then Narad Rishi, and Brahmaji, then Narad, then it just goes on. You can see this disciplic succession in the beginning of Bhagavad-Gita as it is. There's a full list given by Prabhupada. So thank you for joining. Hare Krishna.